Chike Okafor had been gone for 10 years. The once beloved son of Chief Nathan Okafor, a wealthy and influential businessman in Anambra state, had left home after a bitter dispute with his father. Now, he stood at the grand gates of the Okafor estate in Awka, his heart pounding. The mansion, a towering structure built with the finest marble and adorned with intricate Igbo carvings, looked the same. But Chike knew that things inside would be very different. He had heard of his father's death weeks ago but hadn't rushed back for the funeral. The pain of their last conversation still haunted him. "You are no longer my son," his father had roared the night Chike walked out, rejecting the family business in favor of his own dreams. Now, he had returned, not out of nostalgia, but because of his inheritance. No matter how much time had passed, he was still an Okafor, and he wouldn't let anyone take what was his. As he stepped through the gates, he was met by familiar yet hostile faces. Servants whispered among themselves, and the air was thick with unspoken resentment. Then, from the doorway, a man stepped forward, Nnamdi, his younger brother. The last time they had spoken, Nnamdi was a quiet university student, overshadowed by his elder brother's reputation. Now, he was different. His tailored agbada, the confident smirk on his lips, and the gold wristwatch on his wrist all spoke volumes. "You have some nerve showing up here," Nnamdi said coolly. "But then again, I knew you'd come crawling back." Chike met his brother's gaze, his jaw tightening. "This is still my home," he said. "And I have a right to what belongs to me." But he knew, just as Nnamdi did, that this was only the beginning of the battle. The Okafor mansion was a place of grandeur, but as Chike walked through its halls, he felt like a stranger. The massive chandelier in the sitting room still sparkled, the walls were still decorated with portraits of their ancestors, yet everything felt colder. The absence of their father was almost tangible. Nnamdi followed him, his footsteps echoing through the house. "You didn't even come for Baba's burial," he said, his tone laced with disdain. "Now you show up expecting a share of his wealth." Chike sighed, turning to face his brother. "I left because Baba gave me no choice. He never accepted that I wanted something different." Nnamdi scoffed. "Different? You abandoned everything. You left me to pick up the pieces, to prove myself in a business world that only respected you." His voice rose with anger, but he quickly composed himself. "But it doesn't matter. I took over. I built on what Baba left behind, and now you think you can walk in and take your place back." Before Chike could respond, their mother, Madame Ebel Okafor, entered the room. Dressed in an elegant lace wrapper with coral beads adorning her neck, she carried the quiet dignity of a woman who had seen too many battles. "That is enough," she said sternly, looking between her two sons. "Your father is gone, and this family will not fall apart because of greed." Chike clenched his fists. This wasn't about greed. It was about justice. He had sacrificed everything to live on his own terms, and now he would fight for what was his. But one thing was clear, Nnamdi wasn't going to make it easy. That night, Chike sat in his father's old study, running his fingers along the mahogany desk where Chief Okafor had once ruled over his empire. The scent of old books and cigar smoke still lingered. The room was filled with memories, both good and bad. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. His mother entered, her eyes tired but still full of strength. "You should have come earlier, Chike," she said, sitting across from him. Chike exhaled, rubbing his temples. Would it have made a difference? Madame Ebel's gaze softened. "Your father was a proud man. But he never stopped asking about you." Chike swallowed hard. It was difficult to believe. His father's last words to him had been full of anger. But before he could say anything, a voice cut through the silence. "Nnamdi. You're wasting your time, Mama," Nnamdi said, leaning against the doorframe. "Chike is only here for his share of the inheritance, not for family." Chike's jaw tightened. "I don't have to explain myself to you, Nnamdi." His brother smirked. "No, you don't. But the will speaks for itself. Baba left everything to me. The words hit Chike like a punch. He stood abruptly. That's impossible. Madame Ebel sighed, looking away. It's true. Your father's last will leaves the company and estate in Nnamdi's name. Chike felt a cold rage settle in his chest. He had returned for justice. And if the will was against him, he would fight to uncover the truth. The next morning, Chike demanded to see the will. It was presented by the family lawyer, Barrister Okonkwo, a man who had been a loyal confidant of Chief Okafor for decades. As per Chief Nathan Okafor's final testament, Okonkwo began, clearing his throat, the entire Okafor estate, business holdings, and properties are to be inherited by his second son, Nnamdi Okafor. Chike's fingers curled into fists. This makes no sense. Baba always believed in fairness. Nnamdi leaned back in his chair, his smirk growing. Maybe he finally saw you for what you are, a deserter. Chike turned to the lawyer. I want to see the original documents. Barrister Okonkwo hesitated. That won't be necessary, Chike. This is official. But Chike wasn't convinced. Something about the situation felt off. He knew his father, despite their issues, wouldn't have entirely disinherited him. Someone had tampered with the will, and he intended to find out who. Determined to get to the bottom of the will's irregularities, Chike sought out the only person he trusted in his father's business circle, Uncle Azubike, his father's former right-hand man. Azubike lived in the outskirts of Aka, far from the wealth and power of the Okafor estate. When Chike arrived, the elderly man welcomed him cautiously. I knew you would come, he said, motioning for Chike to sit. Chike wasted no time. Did Baba truly intend to cut me out of everything? Azubike sighed, rubbing his grey beard. Your father was angry at you, yes, but even at his worst, he would not have left you with nothing. Chike felt a rush of validation. Then the will was altered. Azubike nodded gravely. I don't have proof, but I heard whispers before your father died. He was sick, weaker than before. If someone wanted to manipulate him, it wouldn't have been difficult. Chike knew exactly who had the most to gain, Nnamdi. That night, Chike stormed into Nnamdi's office. His younger brother was seated behind their father's grand desk, looking every bit the heir to the empire. You forged the will, didn't you? Chike demanded. Nnamdi didn't flinch. Instead, he chuckled, shaking his head. Why would I need to? Baba made his choice. Chike slammed his fist on the desk. I spoke to Uncle Azubike. He says Baba would never have cut me out completely. Nnamdi's expression darkened. Azubike is an old man stuck in the past. If you're looking for sympathy, you won't find it here. Chike narrowed his eyes. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm looking for justice. Nnamdi leaned forward. Then you'll have to fight for it. And Chike knew he would. Chike knew that fighting Nnamdi wouldn't be easy. His younger brother had power, influence, and, most importantly, control over their father's empire. But Chike had something just as valuable, determination. The next morning, he met with Ifani Dyke, a private investigator known for uncovering corporate fraud. Ifani was a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He listened as Chike explained the situation. I need to know if my father's will was tampered with, Chike said. Ifani nodded. Forgery is more common than people think. If your father's real intentions were altered, we'll find out. They started with the lawyer, Barrister Okonkwo. Ifani pulled financial records, phone logs, and traced every move made before Chief Okafor's death. It wasn't long before inconsistencies began to emerge. Barrister Okonkwo received a large sum of money from an anonymous account 3 weeks before your father died, Ifani revealed. That's too much of a coincidence. Chike felt a surge of anger. He was right. Someone had manipulated his father, and now he had proof that something was wrong. But he needed more before confronting Nnamdi again. A breakthrough came when Ifani examined the will itself. He compared the signature on the document to earlier ones signed by Chief Okafor. "This is not a match," Ifani said, pointing to the differences in the handwriting. "Someone forged your father's signature." Chike clenched his fists. "That means the will is fake." Ifani nodded. "Yes. But to challenge it in court, we need the real will or a witness who knew your father's true intentions." Chike thought hard. The only person who might have that knowledge was his mother. That evening, Chike sat with his mother in her private sitting room. The flickering candlelight cast shadows on her weary face. "Did Baba really want Nnamdi to inherit everything?" he asked. Madam Ebel sighed. "Your father was angry with you, Chike, but no, he wouldn't have cut you out entirely. I believe something changed in his last days." Chike leaned forward. "Mama, did Baba mention anything about changing his will?" She hesitated. "A few weeks before his death, he called me into his room. He said he wanted to ensure both of you got a fair share. But before he could act, he felt too ill to do anything." Chike exhaled sharply. "Then Nnamdi took advantage of the situation." His mother nodded sadly. "It wouldn't surprise me. Your brother has always been ambitious." Chike had what he needed, a strong reason to challenge the will. But he had to be careful. Nnamdi wouldn't go down without a fight. The next morning, Chike decided it was time to confront the man who had betrayed their father, Barrister Okonkwo. He arrived at the lawyer's office unannounced. "We need to talk," Chike said firmly as he stepped inside. Okonkwo shifted uncomfortably. "I have nothing to say to you." Chike placed a file on the desk. "I know about the money you received before Baba's death. I know the will was forged. Either you tell the truth, or I take this evidence to the police." The lawyer's face turned pale. He wiped sweat from his forehead. I had no choice. Nnamdi threatened me. He said if I didn't change the will, he would ruin me." Chike's stomach twisted. His own brother had gone this far just to take everything. He had heard enough. "Prepare to testify," Chike ordered. "Because I'm taking this to court." While preparing his case, Chike uncovered another shocking truth: Nnamdi was running the company into the ground. Under his leadership, Okafor Enterprises had made risky investments, and debts were piling up. Employees were being laid off, and stakeholders were starting to complain. "Your brother isn't half the businessman your father was," Ifani told him. "If you don't act fast, there may be nothing left to inherit." Chike knew he had to act now. Chike's lawyer filed an official petition to challenge the will, presenting evidence of forgery. The court summoned Nnamdi for questioning. At the hearing, Nnamdi remained calm. "This is a desperate attempt by my brother to take what he abandoned years ago," he said smoothly. But Barrister Okonkwo, under pressure, finally broke. "The will was changed illegally," he admitted. Gasps filled the courtroom. Chike saw the first flash of panic in Nnamdi's eyes. Just as things were turning in Chike's favor, Ifani made a shocking discovery: a recording of Chief Okafor's last wishes. In the recording, their father's weak voice was clear. "I want my sons to share my legacy. Both of them." This was the final proof Chike needed. Chike played the recording in court. The judge listened carefully. "This changes everything," the judge said, turning to Nnamdi. "You manipulated your father and defrauded your own family." Nnamdi's face hardened, but he knew he was defeated. The court ruled that the forged will was invalid. Chike was reinstated as co-owner of Okafor Enterprises. Nnamdi's empire crumbled. Investors pulled out, and he faced fraud charges. "You did this to yourself," Chike told him. Nnamdi laughed bitterly. "You think you won, but this family will never be the same." Chike didn't disagree. With Nnamdi out of the picture, Chike worked to rebuild the company. He rehired employees and gained back investor trust. But his mother remained distant. "You and your brother have destroyed each other," she said sadly. Chike felt the weight of her words. One night, Chike received a message from Nnamdi. "Meet me," it said. Chike found his brother at an abandoned warehouse. Nnamdi looked broken. "All I ever wanted was to prove I was better than you," Nnamdi admitted. "But at what cost?" Chike asked. Nnamdi didn't answer. He simply walked away, disappearing into the night. Chike focused on making things right. He apologized to the workers, reassured investors, and, most importantly, tried to mend things with his mother. It wasn't easy, but step by step, the Okafor name regained its honor. Months later, Nnamdi reappeared. He wasn't a powerful businessman anymore, he was just a man who had lost everything. Chike offered him a job at the company. "You can still rebuild your life," he said. But Nnamdi shook his head. "I can't. Not here." And just like that, he was gone again. Chike stood in his father's old office, now his. The battles were over, but the scars remained. He had reclaimed his place, but he had lost a brother in the process. His mother's words echoed in his mind, "Family isn't just about blood, Chike. It's about trust." And in the end, he learned the painful truth: sometimes, blood is not thicker.